Right now on Tech Radio, has Ireland let Microsoft get away with it?
Hi, I'm Artemis. I am a computer-generated AI voice, and you're listening to Tech Radio.
Every week online and on air with RT Radio, we bring you the latest in tech from Ireland and across the world. You're welcome to episode 1071, looking at the 7 biggest stories of the week, including Ireland's first class action lawsuit. Elon Musk and Donald Trump are having a conscious uncoupling, and the Young Scientist and Technology exhibition has got a brand new title sponsor. Plus, we'll be chatting about who is managing your data and how with Ashley Casovan from the International Association of Privacy Professionals.
From techcentral.ie, this is Tech Radio with Dusty Rhodes and Niall Kitson.
I'm Dusty. Joining me as always is our editor-in-chief, the man at the top, Niall Kitson. Niall, we have a brand new title sponsor for the Young Scientist and Technology exhibition, and it couldn't be more perfect. Who is it?
Yeah, it's Stripe. So from 2026, it's a 5-year deal. The Young Scientist and Technology exhibition will be called the Stripe Young Scientist and Technology exhibition. Bear in mind that, BT were on the job there for 25 years, so props for them. Of course, its Irish operation is being restructured. There's an awful lot of jobs going, so it just made no sense for BT to continue that association. So Stripe have stepped into the breach, and you said there was no better people to do so because there's some personal history there.
Yeah, because every time we talk about Young Scientists and every time we talk about Stripe, we always mention that the CEO, Patrick Collison, won the Young Scientists and Technology exhibition in 2005. That's only 20 years ago. He was 16 years of age. And I was kind of going, oh my God, he was only 16. And then I realised it is Young Scientists and they're all 16.
Well, Dusty,
yes.
Do you want something scary?
Go on.
We started this podcast in 2007.
Oh my God. Oh my!
Look at it from that perspective.
Oh, now you really are. Okay, let's put the numbers aside. Same year, his brother John won a category award. And if I'm not mistaken, I think I read somewhere that Patrick, he won in 2005, but the year before he was a runner-up, all right? And his project was based on AI. In 2004, he was working on AI. Brilliant. Anyways, the reason why they have become billionaires, this is an amazing story for Patrick and his brother, was they won the Young Scientist. That was great. They started up a little business here, which was quite a success. They went to Enterprise Ireland looking for funding. Enterprise Ireland took a look at these two teenagers and went, are you off your nuts? No way. You're not getting a penny from us. So they moved to California. All right. Set up a company in California still as teenagers. The first company that they set up there sold for $5 million. They were both millionaires before they were 20.
Well, we could do that. We just don't want to.
What do you like? And then after that, of course, they went on to form Stripe and stuff like that. And they're now worth, well, Stripe is worth 90 billion, goodness knows. However, that's congratulations to Stripe and the Collison brothers. And it's a very, very apt sponsorship for the Young Scientists and Technology exhibition, which we love and visit every January. And I would say actually go back in the podcast to January and pick up that episode, because when you hear these kids and the ideas they have and the way they execute them, it's just amazing. Right, listen, coming up, we've got Apple rumours still to talk about, Missy Elliott in space, we've got AI, piracy in court, but the big story this week is Ireland's first class action case going up against Microsoft, of all people. Tell me more.
Yeah, this is a case being taken by the Irish Council for Civil Liberties. So when we say, Ireland taking Microsoft to court, this is actually what's happening. It's the ICCL is taking Microsoft to court. And what this case centers on is real-time bidding, the real-time bidding ad model. So how does that work? This is basically, you visit any website, right? And there are preset slots on every website, right? And this is an advertising practice that is used all across the web. All of big tech users, right? Yeah. So when we're talking about Microsoft, we're not just talking about Microsoft. We're talking about the first in a chain, right? If this case goes well, you will see ICCL versus Facebook, ICCL versus Google. etc., etc. And real-time bidding is based on what ad goes into these slots on this website that you have visited. And it could be any website. And the bidder effectively says, okay, we are marketing X product to X kind of person. We really want to get these ads in front of people. We are willing to spend X. Okay. How do you find out what X kind of person is? Well, you have been tracked all across the web by cookies, finding out where you are, what's your sexual persuasion, what's your gender, any bit of information you are freely giving up about yourself without knowing it. So I guess maybe it's not freely given. All these things go together to produce a behavioral profile of you, right? So Dusty Rhodes might not be attached to it, but user 123456 certainly has their list of predilections and character traits that an advertiser might want to get to. And you find yourself visiting X site, you see a certain ad in front of you. That's because somebody has paid X amount of money to make sure you were put in front of there. And who controls that data? Who controls that profile? Well, the weird thing is we know and we don't know, right? We know that, big tech is collecting these profiles, Microsoft, Facebook, Google, etc. But companies aren't necessarily extracting that data from big tech. They're probably getting it from a broker, from another third party that has a relationship with Microsoft. So there's like tiers of people involved here. And this is kind of where Ireland versus Microsoft comes in, because Microsoft is providing the tech in the background to make sure these profiles are being gathered in the first place, right? So data brokerages are illegal under GDPR anyway. One of the bodies associated with this case, not named, but associated because they're a representative body looking after big tech's advertising interests, which is the IAB, the Interactive Advertising Bureau. They knew as far back as 2018 that GDPR, or rather their advertising practices, the collecting of customer or user profiles is completely antithetical to GDPR. They knew this wasn't going to fly under GDPR, but they were doing it anyway. And they continued doing it anyway. And the ICCL's opinion on this is that this is an ongoing data breach. People's, information that people did not expect, did not want to be used for this purpose, is being used for this purpose, right? So this is where we're going with it. So Dusty, just to compare and contrast, when you visit Tech Central, right, our ad model is based on time and space, right? That's one way of doing it. The other model is based on the amounts of clicks and impressions, right? In particular, clicks, people look at CPM, which is cost per thousand, right? And it's that sort of CPM is where real-time bidding sits in. How much are you willing to spend per thousand, right? That's not 1,000 conversions. That's 1,000 people seeing your ad, 1,000 people being served your ad.
Yeah, I think even better would be to say 1,000 times that your ad is displayed.
Yeah, exactly. There's no guarantee on conversion. I mean, it goes back to the old adage about advertising. I think it was the head of Macy's or Bloomingdale's, one of the US department stores, said, half of my money spent on advertising is wasted. I just don't know which half.
Yeah.
And but this listen, RTB was meant to be a way to circumvent that.
The system that you're describing sounds sensible, and the intention sounds sensible, because what they want to do is they want to show relevant ads to people, and they will charge for those ads depending on an auction basis or whatever.
Yeah.
And whoever pays the most to be put in front of that wins. That's fine. All of that. The data I can understand, because they will need to know that, like, say, I would have an interest in, say, kind of, magic or sorry, I'm really showing the sad side of me here, or flying or whatever, that kind of stuff, like, So when I'm wandering around the web, if I see ads on those topics, it's like kind of, at least it's relevant. Do you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Is there a case where this data is able to point and go, actually, do you know what? That person is Dusty, who lives in blah, 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 address in Dublin, blah, 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 blah. Can it be that precise to say who you are?
Not down to, the name, but it can pick up things like your IP address. So
it could identify you by IP. And that is one of the golden rules with the EU and GDPR.
Oh, one of many.
No personally identifying information. So you can have all the information, and as you say, user 12345 is into this, so display this kind of an ad. But if you're able to say, well, actually, user is such and such, lives at this IP address, that is where it's crossing the line.
Yeah, and this is something that happens hundreds of times a day. I think the ICCL posted a very good video showing the number of companies that this data is shared with. It's hundreds. It's over 300 companies.
Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, if you...
of brands you have never heard of.
Oh, yeah. Did you know what you should do is next time you go onto a website and it asks you cookies, something with our partners, and then you say, well, I'll choose the partners, and you look at that list. It is hundreds of people.
Yeah.
It's unreal, But what's going to happen with this case anyway? When is it going to court, or have they just said that they are going to go to court?
They have just found out that this case can be heard in court. So this is one of those run things. I got 2 press releases about it in the same day. One saying we're going to the High Court to see if this case can be heard, followed a couple of hours later by, yes, it can indeed be heard. So that's a great development. And as we said, if this is, a successful case against Microsoft, expect every big name in big tech to follow. And it's going to cost them money. And the question will be, will they be willing to eat the fines if it remains a profitable model?
Well, that will be very interesting, and I'll tell you why. Because that whole profitable model is being changed by AI search, where we're not relying so much on sponsored placement of blue links. The big search engines are all going to give you an AI summary, and already we are seeing a 30% drop in people clicking on links because they put in their search, AI says, here's the answer, and most people kind of go, okay, cheers, bye.
Yeah. Did we talk about this last week? How SEO is basically, well, it's on its, I don't want to say last legs, but it's certainly in trouble.
No, SEO is certainly not into. I had thought about this, and my counter thought on that was, why would Google give preference to AI answers where the user is not going to take any action, and therefore they will not make any money?
Yeah.
All right, so those little blue links and people clicking on them, that's where all of these search engine boys make their money. So no, it's not going to go away in any shape or form, I don't think. But anyway, it'll be interesting. We'll keep an eye on it. All the stories this week. It's a tech show, so if you want to listen to this show, we do ask that you have seen 2001: A Space Odyssey.
Of course.
Of course, it's de rigueur, isn't it? One of my favorite movies of all time includes one of my favorite pieces of classical music, which is, I think it's Johann Strauss and the Blue Danube.
Yeah, Blue Danube Waltz.
Blue Danube is to be beamed into space. It's all part of a project by the European Space Agency. And once a year, what they do is they take a particular piece of music and then they broadcast it on their big antenna dishes. They got a huge one in Spain, just out into the ether. To see how it's doing. And this year they have chosen Blue Danube by Johann Strauss. And oh man, they're really going to town because it is the 50th anniversary of the European Space Agency. It's the 200th birthday of Johann Strauss. So they're having it performed live by the Vienna Symphony Orchestra and then live streamed. They're going to also have public screenings in Vienna and Madrid and New York. So it's a bit of a big thing. But here's the thing I can't believe. Blue Danube was not included on the Voyager mission. Do you remember back in this?
Yeah, I would have thought this would be like the first piece of music you broadcast.
Exactly. It's like, how did they not include it? It's unbelievable. The Voyager mission, when it was launched in the 70s, has got a gold disc on it, which now seems very quaint. But on that disc, somehow they have digitized all kinds of information with text and images and maybe a little bit of video and certainly music. But one of the tunes wasn't Space, I was going to say Space Odyssey, the Blue Danube. Unreal. But all of this sounds amazing, okay? Until you get to the fact that last year's song that was beamed into space was...
What? What was it?
Missy Elliott.
Well, I mean, what was the song by Missy Elliott?
It was a song by Missy Elliott. But Missy Elliott, hello.
Maybe she had a song called I Love Space. Maybe
it just blew the whole story for me. The other space news this week, of course, is Starship with SpaceX had a failure. It took off. It was meant to deploy fake satellites as part of the test. That's why fake satellites. And then it crashed back to Earth. This is their biggest rocket of all. So the last two, I think, blew up pretty much shortly after takeoff.
Starship.
Yeah.
Something actually did stop them now.
Yes, for anyone who grew up in the 80s, I'm sure they're laughing the pants off right now.
I'm here all week, folks.
Anyways, actually, almost as funny is Starship took off, okay? It went off. It did its thing for a number of minutes. It got further and higher than any other Starship had gone before, so that's good. They're making progress. And then it exploded, all right? But I love the way that they call an explosion in space terminology. It's called an RUD, a rapid unscheduled disassembly.
Oh, my goodness. I thought conscious uncoupling was bad.
How very true. It was due to land in the Indian Ocean. It was due to land in the Gulf of Mexico, but it landed in the Indian Ocean. And my private conspiracy theory is that's what went wrong. Because the computer's up there in space, it goes, okay, Grant, I'm in space, I'm about to let the satellites go. Where do I go next? The Gulf of Mexico. Let me look that up on the map. No, I don't see it. I can't find it. Where is it? Is it near the Gulf of America? I don't know. It's too much. Boom.
That makes sense. Yeah.
Anyway, that wasn't the only bad thing that happened this week for Elon Musk. Tell us more.
Yeah, I mean, we speculated on this in our stories of the year, stories we thought would be big in 2025, that we knew it was only a matter of time before Musk and Trump fell out. Only a matter of time. You can't have two characters like that occupying the same space. It's like Space Cop. They just cancel each other out. Or Time Cop. That was it. Space Cop is a different thing entirely. So, Musk has decided he is stepping back from public life, and he had a few shots to fire while he was doing it. He said, first of all, okay, I'm not spending any more money on politics for the foreseeable future. And from his perspective, I mean, he spent $200 million to get a president that is kind of likes being associated with him, but doesn't seem to like actually doing anything for him. And he also spent $20 million on a Supreme Court race in Wisconsin that he lost. Not to mention the fact that the value of Tesla has tanked under him. Actually, the value of all his companies has tanked while he's been working in the public sector. Now, working, I'm putting in inverted commas. He went into the government effectively under the guise of cutting out waste, fraud and abuse in the public sector and also in public services. Fine. everybody likes getting rid of waste, fraud and abuse, proceeded to discover very little in the way of waste, fraud and abuse, and also discovered that government does not work the same as business. In government, you can't leave people behind. You can't afford to leave people behind. Musk's idea of move fast and break things, well, when you break things, you are leaving a lot of people behind. One of the things that he's looking to break is Social Security. And why is he looking to do it? Well, to facilitate the upward distribution of wealth and to make sure he gets his government subsidies and to make sure that any and all investigations against him kind of disappear. He seems to have gotten most of that. Things have gone very well for SpaceX, for Tesla, for Starlink. He's got what he wants out of it. From a reputational hit, it has not been a good experience. He thought people would absolutely love that the richest, smartest man in the world was going to come in and fix government. Turns out that government just isn't fixable in the way that he wanted. Apparently, he was only going to last until May anyway. It seems to be, okay, I'm not only leaving, I'm not even doing the hand behind the throne kind of stuff. I am out of here. I've got companies to look after that have not been doing well in my absence. So the question sort of remains. I mean, Tesla sales in Europe are appalling at the moment. I think they sold only 7,000 cars across the continent, slightly more than 7,000 in the first quarter.
Wow.
This is disastrous. I mean, Tesla should be absolutely flying. Instead, you're seeing companies like BYD coming in and just eating their lunch by virtue of, having regular updates and, being a little bit more, a little bit easier on the pocket. Mm-hmm. So as a final parting shot to the Trump administration, Musk sort of said, okay, well, look, Doge, we found all these places you can cut. And you're not doing it. It's none of it, well, very little of it, if any, is in the so-called big, beautiful bill that Congress has just passed and is going to the Senate, which may or may not get passed there. And he was like, look, these cuts, we went and we did the work. They should be codified into law. They shouldn't be, discretionary things. They should actually be, this is, we're cutting this. This agency cannot get bigger than this or what have you. And that's kind of it. As I said, to quote Chris Martin and what's her name again? Goop lady. Gwyneth Paltrow.
Yeah.
They are having their conscious uncoupling. It doesn't seem to be particularly acrimonious, but at the same time, I think they've agreed that there are certain things on which they're not a good fit, and that's that.
As the rest of the world goes, told you so.
Told you so.
Yeah, another thing that is going on the internet this week, a big backlash with Nick Clegg, the UK politician who then went into Meta as head of their global affairs and has since left. But he made a claim which really annoyed the internet, saying that asking artists for consent for AI training would kill the AI industry. Why are people up in arms?
Former leader of the Liberal Democrats and former darling of the Guardian newspaper, Nick Clegg, went to work for Big Evil.
Big Evil. I love it.
Went to work for Facebook, basically being an evangelist and being wheeled out in front of the press every time Facebook does something wrong and saying, well, look, the reason we do it is because this, and we're right. That was basically what he did during his tenure in Facebook. He made this statement saying if you limit the amount of data AI can use to train itself with, you're limiting AI as a movement, as a technology, as everything. Now, of course, Getty Images, actually quite a few people have come out and said, well, that's kind of a nonsense argument, really. Getty, for example, have taken an AI image generator to court, but the legal action, which I think they actually won, it cost them millions. It was not a cost-effective strategy. It was open and shut. They were able to go, these are our images, these are our logos, these are our everything. And you have just fed them into your machine and now you're making money off it. And what the hell? Clegg's argument was, well, you can't just ask people whether they want to give their permission to have an AI be trained on their stuff, which, I don't know, seems kind of special to me.
Oh, no. I know what he's doing. And it's the old opt-in, opt-out. Yeah, so it's kind of basically like, it's kind of like, well, do you know what we do is we go and do it anyway and we give people the opportunity to opt out. But that's only if they're aware or they know what system it is to opt out and whatever. And anyway, you shouldn't. It's like kind of like breaking into somebody's house and saying, I'm just going to take this jewelry, unless, of course, you'd rather I didn't.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to quote a lawyer by the name of Max Kennerly. Very learned gentleman.
Yeah.
Posted this on Blue Sky. Kind of taking the mick out of Clegg's argument, which went as follows. Our product creates such little value that it is simply not viable in the marketplace, not even as a niche product. Therefore, we must be allowed to unilaterally extract value from the work of others and convert that value into our profits.
Nicely put. Shots
fired.
Listen, some Apple rumors in a second, but first, diversity and equity and inclusion, in the workplace. There was a survey out this week from Expolo, which is kind of finding that some companies are not dealing with this, and as a result, they are losing employees.
Well, DEI was, if you want somebody slammed for doing a bad job and they happen to be a person of color, well, what do you do these days? You call them a diversity hire. That's what you do.
Or I think in private, I think is how you'll find that happens.
And DEI initiatives were first things in the crosshairs of the new Trump administration. Their argument is, hey, you should be there on merit, not because of what you are. But we all know what this is a dog whistle for. We all know what the preferred ethnic makeup of the Trump administration is. So let's not delve too deeply into that. However, we have seen big tech fall into line when it comes to DEI measures. A lot of programs have been dropped. Other companies have said, we're moving in a different direction, or these initiatives don't really have any value for us anymore because we're all fantastic, or we're going to do what the administration not so much says, but is put forward. We like their idea of meritocracy. Let's do this. However, this sort of falling into line, it's actually come with some consequences. It discovers that people don't like working for companies that don't value inclusion. And ourselves and the Tech Excellence Awards, we still have our diversity award. It's very important to us. Companies with more diverse workforces generally perform better. And this survey from Explio kind of backs that up. They said that 40% of large businesses in Ireland have lost employees due to DEI policy changes. So you join a company, you join a large organization. Chances are you're in a pretty good job if you do so. And somebody in management changes the goalposts and says, you know what, we're not interested in supporting Pride anymore, right? Something like that. Well, a lot of people are saying, do you know what, that's your decision, but that's not our values. It's a buoyant jobs market at the moment. We get to choose who we work for. We're not going to work for you. You might, that's not going to keep you awake at night, but the idea of working for a company whose values don't align with mine kind of keeps me awake at night. So yeah, I'm sorry, we got to go. So it's not all is not lost at all. 49%, according to this survey, said they were increasing their commitment to DEI in Ireland, while 42% said there is too much being placed on it, too much focus being placed on it. So we're almost at 50-50. Some companies going, do you know what, this is a bit much. This whole identitarian stuff, it's been pretty, you're only going to lose people over it. Whereas other people are saying, do you know what, diverse workforce is a strength and it helps us attract more people because it makes us look progressive. And the people that we want to employ, guess what? They tend to be younger, kind of politically progressive. It falls into lockstep with what they want. So it's kind of, who do you want to placate? Do you want to placate? Do you want to placate an American administration who might not be there in 3 years? Or do you want to placate people that would potentially be with your company and generating value there for a long time? And let's look at this through the value of what's happening in American universities at the moment. We had a student from Norway who was, quote unquote, evacuated from Harvard during the week because there were concerns over, their safety just being in the US. And people are worried about, I've got a green card, I leave the country, can I actually get back in?
Yeah. Well, just look what's going on with all the students on the J1 visas at the moment. Yeah. They are being warned. Say nothing, essentially, is what they tell them. Double check your social media. Don't rock the boat. They're all being warned. I've never heard of stuff like that. And that's coming from government.
Yeah.
Not just from music, so it's a crazy world, Listen, let's wrap up with Apple WWDC, which is coming in the next week or two, 9th of June. Rumors abound. I love rumors, so that's why I'm ending on that. They say that it could be a whole new look for Mac OS. We'll see if that happens. The one that came out this week is that Mac iOS is going to be labelled in future by year, instead of by the version number. But I don't know what it is. iOS, what?
Yeah, they'll be starting with 26 because they released 26. Some sample icons. So everything will be 26.
Interesting. And why not? I mean, it worked for Windows 98. Mm-hmm. And then there will be lots of rumors about Apple Intelligence, which has far from lit the world on fire. We'll see what they have to say this year. It'll be more amazing things, and they'll say coming in June 2026 or something. And
if something doesn't arrive, they'll just hope people forgot about it.
There you go. Exactly. Keynote is happening on Monday week, June 9th. We'll have full details on that for you, of course, on the website at techcentral.ie and here on the podcast as well. But for now, for this week, for the news, Niall, thank you as always for everything.
Delivering Irish tech news since 2006, this is Tech Radio.
Data is the lifeblood of our society, but it comes in so many forms that it can be hard to recognise what is useful, usable, and what should be considered off limits. GDPR has done a good job of giving clarity to how data should be processed and stored, but this is a truly global problem. And when we need so much data to fuel AI, what can be done to protect the average user, such as ourselves, where it doesn't apply? Ashley Casovan is Managing Director of the International Association of Privacy Practitioners AI Governance Centre. Al Kitson met her at the IAPP's AI Governance Global EU Conference in Dublin, which was held recently, to get her perspective.
Ashley, just in having a chat before our interview proper, I guess if there is a motif going through your career, it's kind of selling people on difficult ideas. You kind of started in the public sector and in working with open data. Of course, with AI, you're still working with data, albeit in a very different form. So tell me a little bit about your origins back in Canada.
Yeah, sure. Thank you so much. And really happy to talk to you. Yeah, I would not have thought to characterize it that way, but I guess that is true. I think I've always been involved in and interested in different topics that pose or present challenges which don't necessarily have easy solutions, or solutions that do, as you said, require some convincing. And I think both in terms of illumination of what the problem is that you're trying to achieve, and then the pathway to create a appropriate solution to address that problem or challenge. And so I started in municipal government, and then had the opportunity to be seconded to the federal government, where I worked for Treasury Board Secretariat that was responsible for oversight of government's use of policies, procedures, all of the boring things that nobody really likes to think about, but kind of make government work and function. And at the time, when I was at municipal government, I became really interested in the use of data. And I think it just is because I had the opportunity to work on the very first Obama campaign. And prior to that, I had worked on campaigns in Canada. And just to see the difference between the use of data and data that was being collected for campaigning purposes and the accuracy that you got based on that type of knowledge. It being my first job, I was like, well, why don't we do this for everything? And you get into a bureaucracy like government, and even in a small municipality, a relatively small municipality, you have all of these different people that collect different types of data, and the authority to transfer it or combine it was never really clear. And so open data was a solution to that, which was, okay, we'll just put it in one place. People will have access to it. The public's already paid for this, for the collection of it and any sort of production of it. And so we should therefore be able to release it. So it seems easy enough. And in theory, you have to do a lot of convincing. You have to really think through, again, what those solutions are that will allow you to share it in the way that you want to. Where is it going to sit? How is it going to be maintained? How do you describe what it is? So putting things like data dictionaries around it to even have people use it, because you can put it there, but if it's not accessible or understandable by people, it's not actually that practical and useful. So all that to say is that because of that work, I then was asked to go work for the federal government, and what was initially supposed to be 2 years turned into 6. And through that time, while I stayed in Treasury Board Secretariat, I had the opportunity to build out what is now Open.Canada. And that's the equivalent of an open data portal, which got expanded into having information and other types of resources on it. And so it's a broader open government portal as a result. And I got to work on things like open source licensing and understanding sharing agreements between different jurisdictions, between government entities that then are working with like health authorities as an example. And so how all of that works, the lineage of data from when it's collected to just the various different services across government. And so as a result, I really got to learn not only about the flow of data and then the agreements related to it or the lack thereof, but also I got to learn about how government works and what government does, and both in municipal and then in federal government. And I did, while I was in university, have the opportunity to work for a member of the Legislative Assembly. So I had that provincial level understanding as well in the province of Alberta. And so, yeah, all this to say is that I really, through all of those experiences, learned a lot about how government works, the data that it collects, and really was hoping to be in a position where I could figure out how to leverage data to provide better services to Canadians, to Edmontonians, et cetera. So I think that with that mission in mind and seeing how it was possible in the campaign, like we saw in 2008, it was really a game changer in terms of how do you know where and how to fix services, develop better solutions, et cetera. And so that really then took me into a lot of the AI governance work that I'm doing now, which is originally developing policies for government's use of AI systems. I'm sure we can get into that more if you have questions related to it. But then seeing that even though I was really coming at this from a data perspective, saw that there were challenges with other types or lack thereof standardization for how we're actually going to implement AI systems to be useful and usable. And data is a part of it, but it was a lot broader. And then now I have the opportunity to work for IAPP, a professional association, where we're really thinking about who are the people that are responsible for governing and managing those systems, and what types of standards and knowledge do they need to have and be aware of in order to do that competently.
I mean, looking at data and the quality of data and its sourcing really seems to be the original problem of artificial intelligence, if you will, junk in, junk out. When you were working in the public sector, did you find an incredible lack of knowledge and problem in terms of where data was being kept, what standards were being used, what kind of, how large a project it would have to be to get one part of the government to effectively talk to another. I imagine working with a giant bureaucracy, you required buy-in at administrative levels, but also at the level of somebody that's, inputting their workload into a keyboard, an entire cultural change, if you will. Was that your experience?
It has been my experience in every single position I've had in relation to both data and AI. So my first experience, why I became really interested in open data, I was working in the communications department, and I was writing briefing notes for counselors that were going to different events. And in this case, it was a playground opening. And it, in the list of all things that government does, probably not the most crucial, but it is something that's very important to the community that spent years fundraising for this match grant that the counselor was then going to open. So these things they're really important for the people that are there. And the counselor's office, I wanted to ask the community services branch, how much information was how much was the grant, and what do we know about the people and the community to put it into at least the briefing notes for so that the counselor would have it. And they said that they couldn't give me that information because it was distributed amongst several different systems. And again, we're talking about a relatively small department, like 1,200 people or something. And so why was my first question, do you have data in multiple places? And then the other block was I had to talk to my communications person that was in that department. I couldn't talk directly to the people that had access to the data, which just blew my mind because I was very new to government and did not understand how these things worked. So I think back to your original question of needing to convince people of things, I just started asking a bunch of questions. And it's sometimes when you work for politicians or work on behalf of the politicians, you can get answers faster than other people. And so I think I asked the questions that I was just sharing with you. And as a result, it led me to understand, again, where the data is, where it's processed, by who, or what the process is in order to get access to that. And then through that, realized with many other stories very similar to that, that even though that data, or the reason why that data is in different locations is because it's collected for different purposes. Therefore, it has different standards. It has different degrees of quality. The governance around the management of that data is likely different. And so even though I have a very specific outcome often for the reason I'm requesting it, it wasn't the initial intent for why that data was being collected or used. And I've then seen that subsequently when working for federal government on very real and important issues like immigration or train derailments and other types of prediction types of services that the federal government was using data for. And so I think to your question, really, I've seen a lot of issues related to governance challenges that are relatively new, I would say, because of the advancement of technology and the reasons why we were trying to use them, or different types of service requests, like the very small example of the one that I was giving you, that wasn't kind of the initial purpose for that. And so I think that there's my naive mindset is, I think, just an example of how when you have access to be able to triangulate data and make determinations from it, and that's your perspective, which I think is what much of the world sees now and now has that expectation, then we're in a situation where we've been historically collecting data and information for a long time, not for the purposes of that triangulation. So we don't have the standards, we don't have the consent practices, we don't have the right procedures and processes to even access it appropriately. And so I think that's, hopefully that answered your question, but I think that's not only why I became really interested in it, but really where I saw some of these early challenges with even just a lot of the issues that we're grappling with AI today.
So let's have a look at governance, which is your primary area of interest at the moment. And where does governance actually sit in sort of a hierarchy of needs, if you will, when it comes to AI? I mean, I imagine working in the public sector, dealing with an awful lot of bureaucracy, actually creates something of an accidental bulwark where you end up sort of having to wait to see what the next few steps down the road are before you can, implement a governance policy, versus, say, the likes of startups or companies based in Silicon Valley with that move fast and break things ethos, where one imagines governance as well down the food chain. So how are you managing that sort of balance at the moment? And how do people see governance? Is it something that's essential, or is it a nice to have, or is it something that gets in the way of progress?
Such a great question. And I think you're really getting to the crux of what a lot of we're doing as part of our research right now, but also that I think organizations are grappling with. So the short answer is it depends. There's not one way or one type of prioritization across all of these different companies. We recently put out an AI governance profession report that looks at some of those questions, and there's themes within it. So even the regional differences that you're mentioning, there are different ethos. There are different, I think, cultural expectations that exist, sure, geographically, but we found it more to be related to the size of company, the domain in which they worked in. So if you have a healthcare or finance company that's already in a heavily regulated industry, you're more likely to prioritize your governance mechanism or just augment your existing governance to deal with AI or deal with the uses of AI. So that's why we're also seeing an expansion of the role of chief privacy officers or cybersecurity officers to also have AI governance within their remit. It doesn't necessarily mean that they're the same function. I don't want to confuse those two things, but just to say that those all need to be working together with one another. We have another report, an organizational governance, digital governance report, and in that it outlines what some of those the roles that we're seeing, but also how they're being established within these companies and some of those trends. But interestingly enough, one of my favorite findings from the previous report, the AI governance profession report, is that 30% of organizations that we surveyed are actually starting with their AI governance practice and then getting into the acquisition or use of AI because they recognize or they're prioritizing it ahead of then the implementation. So they're putting those guardrails in because they're recognizing that that's allowing them to go faster and it's going to allow them to move. So I think we're at a point where we're going to have both the move fast and break things camp, and then we're going to have the people that are really trying to, are not necessarily sure of how AI is going to impact their industry. And so they're trying to put those safeguards or guardrails, as I said, in place. So that'll give them some boundaries for how they're going to use it better. And also, I think how they're going to work with their AI providers. And so that's something that we're seeing quite a bit with this, is that you have traditional service providing companies that are not actually building a lot of that AI in-house. And so because they're procuring it, because they're needing to have those contracts and those relationships, that it's easier for them to know what they're getting into, eyes wide open before, and establish those rules before acquiring them.
You mentioned there working across territories. In Europe, we're sort of famous for having a fairly heavily regulated market when it comes to big tech, starting with GDPR and moving on towards the AI Act that we have at the moment. In the way that GDPR became something of an international gold standard, do you see something similar happening with the AI Act, or is the language and the sort of the parameters therein still quite vague and maybe not enough for companies to be able to stand up and say, well, this is it, we're compliant with the EU AI Act and it's not going to get any more strict than that?
Yeah, I personally think it's going to evolve in a different way than GDPR did. And what I mean by that is that I think that there were a lot of requirements that came from GDPR that were then just adopted in other regulations across the world, the objectives of those requirements were then reflected in other pieces of legislation, and I think that it's very, very different with the EU AI Act. We're already seeing the influence of it in that it is based on product safety legislation as well as human rights. And then also that similar to what we did with the Directive on Automated Decision-Making Systems in Canada was classify the requirements based on the risk that those AI systems pose. And so I think that elements of it and common principles that are already adopted by the community that are then embedded in it, like the OECD principles, are going to then be reflected in other pieces of legislation globally. But I don't think that we're going to see the same comprehensive piece of legislation for all types of AI in the way that the EU's done that in many other jurisdictions. Canada tried to take a halfway approach to that, as an example, with Bill C-27, or the AI and Data Act, which was an addition to Bill C-27 that also had privacy and consumer protection included in it. And that was the most controversial debate, and it ultimately never got passed. We'll see with this new government if something like Bill C-27 gets re-proposed, but it'll be really interesting to see if it is that comprehensive, overarching legislation of technology versus domain specific, which is what we're seeing in other domain specific and technology specific, like we're seeing in other jurisdictions.
So looking at what organizations can do for themselves, I mean, for big tech, certainly the dream is to be entirely self-regulating. And when it comes to something like AI, where you have the option to go, okay, we're going to create a team over here dealing specifically with ethics in AI. Are we going to see more of that approach, or are we going to see, okay, you over there, you're looking after data privacy already, just add AI onto your job title there and that will matter? Or is there going to be a much more considered view? So it's sort of, will companies do as little as they can get away with, or are they going to be proactive in terms of, heading off any problems before they become significant issues?
Yeah, I think what we're already starting to see in some of the reports that I've shared with you is that organizations are taking the approach of recognizing that there's a lot of different rules in a lot of different jurisdictions related to digital governance overall, and they're all interconnected with one another. And so they're putting these teams together where you still have domain subject matter experts in AI or cybersecurity or data or privacy, but they're getting more integrated as a team because they have that different domain knowledge. And even we had this AI governance and healthcare workshop yesterday, and one of the conversations from one of the presenters was related to, she's a lawyer, and she was talking about how her law firm's dealing with some of the cases or advising clients right now. And they're bringing in lawyers into one room that are representative of all those different domains that I just mentioned, as well as then subject matter experts, a lawyer with some background, let's say, in healthcare in this circumstance. And they're kind of duking it out. Like, they're debating on which elements and which aspects will apply, or which are higher risks to not necessarily not comply with, but do in a different prioritization. And so I think that is really what's happening inside of these companies as well, is that as you're asking, it's not just being added to the plate of an existing privacy professional without any additional support. I'm sure that is also happening, but especially in large multinational companies where there's pre-existing teams that are thinking about compliance in these other domains or avenues are really being brought together. And then whether or not that means additional resources, what our professional report just found is that there'll be, I think it's 9.8 new people, net new, on a governance team, 9.8 people on a governance team for AI. But whether that's net new or whether that's everybody's adding a little bit to their plate, I think is unknown at this time. But there's definitely a delta there, both in terms of knowledge and in terms of capacity. And whether that means reorganization or reprioritization, or it means just adding in additional resources, really is dependent on the company.
So effectively, you have a case where one problem could become six based on what perspective you have on it. So just looking forward then, how do companies breach that sort of skills gap that we know we are going to have the following problems because we've identified them in theory. So how do you actually address them in sort of a cost-effective manner, but also one that respects the consumer as well? Because they don't have to be mutually exclusive.
Yeah. I really appreciate you asking this, because something that I'm working on right now with one of my colleagues is a skills competency framework for what even is an AI governance professional. And part of that is recognizing that it's not going to all be in one person. There's very few unicorns, if you will, that are going to have a background in ethics and data science and coding and the subject domain expertise, and also then compliance and policy development. So plus more. And so really with the recognition that unlike what we have in privacy, where you have dedicated chief privacy officers or data protection authorities, that it is going to have to be a team sport and a team effort. And so I think that the first thing to do, just back to your question, is identify what types of skills do we need around the table to govern and manage AI. And I think to your point that it's not just about management from a de-risking for the business perspective, but also what the consumers need and how consumers are being protected. And so having those subject matter experts in the room, like I was mentioning with healthcare or that example, that are really understanding what the implications are, the downstream problems of integrating an AI system for whatever reason into your environment is a really, really essential skill or piece of knowledge, a person with that knowledge to have present in those governance conversations.
And lastly, in looking at the swathe of organizations and sectors that are using AI at the moment or have plans to, are there any that you think are uniquely suited or uniquely equipped already to be looking after the regulatory demands and also their customers?
I guess I would answer that in two ways. I think that you have the companies that have signed up for the AI Pact that are kind of putting their hands up. This is the EU Commission has put together an AI Pact, and companies have put up their hand to say that they're going to comply in advance of the requirements, or when the timeline of when they have to comply. And so I think that's one group that's really proactively trying to think through what these implications of these rules are going to be within their own business, work closely, or use that as an opportunity to work closely with the Commission to provide feedback, help to shape it based on their realities, and then also just get access to conversations of probably some clarification that they won't have time for. I would say, though, that even companies outside of the AI Pact, the Commission's announced that they're going to have a help desk. And so just a note to say that I think that how government is responding is also important in all of this as well. And then there's also just the companies that are already, like I was mentioning earlier, in heavily regulated sectors. They already have a sense of how to implement strong compliance functions. And so a lot of, I think AI governance seems complex and a bit scary because it can be. And the harms and implications are really, can be quite disastrous. That said, companies that already have an understanding of doing risk assessments and having documentation for their governance mechanisms and having governance boards to review things that would be classified as a high-risk system in this circumstance are really just in a position where they need to augment that versus start net new. And I would say even for smaller organizations or in industries that don't have that regulation, if you're following some of those best practices or have those governance mechanisms in place, you don't need to start net new.
And that was Ashley Casovan from the International Association of Privacy Professionals chatting with Niall Kitson. You can find out more about them at iapp.org, and that link in the show notes description area of this podcast for you right now.
This is Tech Radio with Dusty Rhodes and Niall Kitson.
That's it for our show this week. Before we go, though, do check out some more stories we have on the website for you, including
the SETU has finally gotten its due as a leader in European research. We ask why office workers aren't, or are they, using business devices to pirate content. And the developer of a dementia management app goes forward to the semi-finals of this year's Technovate Global Competition.
You'll find those and more online at techessential.ie. We're back again next Friday with a brand new show online and, of course, with RTE Radio 1 Extra. In the meantime, please do share our podcast with a friend. Your recommendation means a ton, believe me. If they're interested in tech, just ask them to look up Tech Radio Ireland on Apple, Spotify, YouTube, or wherever they get their podcasts. For now, from myself, Dusty Rhodes, and from Niall Kitson, thank you for listening and have an excellent long bank holiday weekend. Take care.
Remember, you can get the latest Irish tech news with hourly updates, daily newsletters, and more at our website, techcentral.ie. Share the knowledge and invite a friend to listen. Search Apple, Spotify, or YouTube for Tech Radio Ireland, or listen with RTE Radio 1 Extra. Tech Radio is produced by dustpod.io for techcentral.ie. From me, Artemis, live long and prosper.